It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Priscilla Simon.
Hi, this is your 420 Radio News for Monday, June 16th, 2014. Governor Rick Scott of Florida has signed legislation making his state the ninth to allow the use of cannabidiol oil for medical purposes. Governor Scott said in a statement that as a, quote, father and grandfather, you never want to see kids suffer, end quote, and that this CBD-only bill will get children the, quote, medication needed to improve their quality of life, end quote. CBD oil will only be available for the treatment of cancer and epilepsy, and unlike other CBD-only states, Florida will have approved producers allowed to grow strains of less than 0.8% THC and greater than 10% CBD. The Republican senators who pushed the so-called Charlotte's Web bill into law expressed hope it would derail the November vote for a whole plant medical marijuana constitutional amendment, with one saying, quote, I hope the passage of the Charlotte's Web bill shows people we've done the responsible thing and that legalizing euphoric marijuana for functionally recreational purposes would be unnecessary and undesirable, end quote.
Well, that's the quote I've been waiting for in any one of these CBD states that just proves what the intent is behind this for a lot of these legislators. It's not so much about helping sick kids suffer. It's about getting the heat off their ass for being incompassionate toward people, being uncompassionate. This idea that they're trying to float this thought, this frame they're pushing, legalizing euphoric marijuana. Now it's not being called medical marijuana, you see. Now they're trying to frame it so that CBD is the medical marijuana and the THC is the euphoric marijuana. That's exactly the frame they want to put this in, to make people think that medical marijuana is some sort of fraud, that THC is not medical in any sort of way, and that anybody who's pushing for CBD is doing so for what they call, quote, functionally recreational purposes. This is all fig leafing. This is all covered the ass of the politicians who don't want to be on the wrong side of history, as now 80 or 90% of the public supports medical marijuana. We saw this with Governor Corbett in Pennsylvania, getting the favorable headline of changing his mind on medical marijuana when actually it was just support of a CBD only bill. Don't be fooled by this CBD only stuff. This is just political cover. It's not doing anything to really help the patients that are going to need it, including those kids that need the CBD, because we're finding that they often need different ratios of THC with their CBD for it to be most effective. I don't think this is going to work though in Florida. I think the people in Florida are smart enough to support the constitutional amendment, and this won't go down like Proposition 19, where Governor Schwarzenegger signed a decrim bill to try to take the wind out of medical marijuana sales. Legalization sales, excuse me. Go ahead, Priscilla.
Burglaries and robberies at marijuana shops in Denver are down a quarter since 2012. According to the city safety department, Denver suffered 173 such burglaries and robberies in 2012, and 151 occurred in 2013. The city is currently on pace for 130 by year's end, which would be a reduction of over 25% in 2 years and almost 14% from last year. These reductions coincide with and exceed overall reductions in property crime in Denver, where there were 1,789 burglaries and robberies from January through April, down almost 5% from the same period in 2013. These crime figures decline despite the continued difficulty dispensaries and pot shops have in securing banking services, leaving them as all-cash businesses that are more attractive for burglary and robbery.
Boy, these figures don't make any sense, Priscilla. You're saying that we've got 14% less burglaries and robberies in pot shops than last year, but the overall burglaries and robberies went down 5%. It's almost like these pot shops are being burgled and robbed less than other businesses out there. And from what I understand, Denver's supposed to be some sort of chaotic hellscape of apocalyptic fire and demons and pot zombies roaming the street since legalization. It couldn't be safer, could it?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they've got the figures on the butter crust or like the Hostess shops here, but I mean, everything's pretty kosher. Everything's really kosher.
Well, that's good to hear.
New Approach Oregon announced today that they have surpassed 100,000 signatures in their push to put marijuana legalization on the November ballot. On Thursday, the group turned in 83,500 signatures to the Secretary of State, and in a press release today announced the 100,000 figure. The initiative needs 87,213 valid signatures before July 3rd, and New Approach Oregon has paid signature gatherers continuing to canvass in order to make sure the goal is reached after invalid signatures are disqualified. According to the campaign, over 10,000 Oregonians a year are arrested for marijuana. New Approach Oregon has spent over $620,000 on the campaign so far and just received donations of $250,000 and $150,000 in the past week. The legalization initiative would allow adults 21 and older to possess 8 ounces and grow 4 plants. Create a system of growers, producers, and retailers, each requiring a $1,250 fee and license, and mandate a strict cap of $1.25 per gram in taxation.
There's so many numbers today. It's all
Why'd
numbers.
you do that?
Why do we do that to you? Oh my God. But these are good numbers. We're happy about these numbers. This
Right.
strict cap. I'm so excited mostly about the recreational marijuana industry that's going to be set up here in Oregon when this thing gets on the ballot and passes. The most recent poll has shown Oregonians 51% in favor, 41% opposed to the generic question of marijuana legalization. I feel when they see the details of this in later polls, they're going to be even more in support for this. And what's really exciting is because we've been talking about this box canyon and this tendency for marijuana laws to get more and more and more restrictive. We are going to see in 2014 Oregon pass a really wide open legalization. We're going to see Florida pass in 2014 a pretty wide open whole plant medical marijuana law. So from both corners of the country, we're going to be rebutting this idea that marijuana needs to become more and more restricted. We're going to open things up. In Oregon, we're talking about 8 ounces and 4 plants, but that's not quite all. It's an ounce of concentrates, specifically mentioned hash oil concentrates will be legal. An ounce of concentrates, 8 ounces of plants, 16 ounces of edibles, 72 ounces of tinctures. That's a 6-pack of tinctures, and the cultivation of 4 plants. Now, this is limited on a residential basis. You can only have that in one house. So if there's, 4 of you living in a house, you each only get to possess 2 ounces of weed and grow 1 plant. And a lot of people are complaining about that. However, the commercial licensing is at $1,250 for growers, processors, and retailers. So if you want to grow more than 4 plants, spend your $1,250 and get your commercial grower's license. There's nothing in this law that requires you to actually sell any of that marijuana or pay any taxes on it, because if you don't sell it, you don't have to pay any taxes on it. So if you got a household of 4 of you and you want to grow more than 4 plants, kick in each of you, what would it be, $312 a piece? Get your annual grower's license and grow to your commercial heart's content. You never really have to sell any of that stuff. And this capping the taxation at $1.25 a gram, it actually works out to $35 an ounce tax. $35 an ounce tax flat. That's it. No sales taxes, no excise taxes. So when Washington State has been up and running, their pot shops are supposed to open next month. They'll have pot shops up and running for 2 years based on 25% taxation at 3 different levels, plus an 8% state sales tax, plus the limitation of 1 ounce purchases. And they're going to have to try to compete with Oregon just across the river, where we're going to have 8 ounces of marijuana and a $35 an ounce tax. There's no way they'll be able to compete. And every state from that point on is going to have to say, hey, look, if we want to take some of Oregon's business, we've got to come up with better tax rates. It'll work just the way it works today with other businesses that get all sorts of tax breaks and sweetheart deals from states to lure their business in. Oregon and Florida are going to break the logjam. They're going to break through this box canyon, and they're going to lead to greater freedom for all people who use marijuana, sick and healthy alike.
Show Me Cannabis in Missouri has erected a huge billboard in support of medical marijuana. The billboard features a picture of Daryl Bertrand, who suffers from degenerative disc disease and spinal stenosis, and his wife, with the title, quote, "Cannabis saved his life, Prohibition ruined theirs. Help Missouri patients get access. Text MED, capital MED, to 420-420. MED for MO.com," end quote. Daryl had been caught growing 47 marijuana plants after he could no longer take prescription painkillers without destroying his liver. He and his wife received years of probation and lost their playground equipment business over the charges. Since his arrest, Daryl uses no cannabis and deals with constant pain. Quote, "I'm totally miserable," he told the Springfield News Leader, and is helping Show Me Cannabis Fight for Medical Marijuana initiative in 2016.
You know, Missouri could be one of those states, along with Arkansas there, that could break through in the South. I'm really expecting this to happen. I got word from the folks in Arkansas today that they are looking good on their signature counts for a medical marijuana initiative in Arkansas. Missouri has always had a strong activist base. Some of those Missouri activists moved here to Oregon, and they're the ones that are running the New Approach Oregon legalization campaign. So there's strong ties between Oregon and Missouri that way. The people of Missouri are compassionate. They're going to realize that people like Daryl Bertrand and his wife shouldn't have their lives destroyed, their careers destroyed, their reputations destroyed, just because he finally found a medicine that works. This guy's tried all the other painkillers. He's done the surgery. He is the quintessential face of medical marijuana in America today, and the fact that Missouri would treat him as a criminal and through P-testing and probation refuse to allow him to gain the relief that he knows medical marijuana can give him, it's cruel and unusual punishment, and it shouldn't be allowed under the Eighth Amendment.
New Mexico's Governor Susana Martinez is proposing changes to the medical marijuana program that have patient advocates protesting. Under the new changes, patients would, for the first time, be subject to a fee to register for medical marijuana. New Mexico's registry has been free, but soon patients may have to pay $50 to register. Patients registered to grow their own medical marijuana would be reduced from a limit of 16 plants to just 8, and would be subject to criminal background checks they must fund out of pocket. Nonprofit producers would be allowed to triple their plant counts from 150 to 450, but the annual fees would triple too, from $30,000 to $90,000. 12 new producers would be added to the current 23, but they will be subject to an application fee that rises from $1,000 to $10,000. One medical marijuana producer explained, quote, "If your intent is to kill the New Mexico medical cannabis program, these proposed rules will do just that," end quote.
God, what a shame here, because New Mexico's been coasting along. They've had about 3,500 patients. They were the first state to explicitly recognize post-traumatic stress in their qualifying conditions. But this Republican governor just wants to take it backwards. And it's all fueled by this need to try to keep the so-called criminals out. You know, healthy people who like marijuana. Even though there's really no evidence of that being a problem in New Mexico, it's always the boogeyman the Republicans fear, and they've got to do something to try to stop it. Oh my, oh my, oh my. It's that bell that Big Daddy Fink hates. It's 420 in Denver. Priscilla Sibon's about ready to celebrate the Spurs' 5th championship since drafting Tim Duncan. Thanks for the news, Priscilla. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right, see ya.
When we come back, we're going behind the headlines. We'll take a look at the Oregonians' report on the high intensity